Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Mondays with Michelle video. This week, we'll discuss the type of information available in court records, particularly for those individuals who were frequent guests of the prison system. We'll look at various websites and talk about the resources available. Let's get started. I just started looking to see what was available on the internet for mugshots, photograph albums for criminals. So I was literally Googling things like images of criminals, England, mugshots, historical England, and I found a number of articles. This was an article in The Sun. What was interesting about this is they were focusing on how young some of the mugshots were. So this was a child age 7 who was punished in 1870 for stealing sweetmeats. So this is his picture. Here's another one, Joseph Kilminster. So I thought it was interesting just seeing even in newspaper articles, they've managed to unearth some of these records. And I thought this was interesting. More than 235,000 prison records and photos from the past 180 years have been published online. So that says there's a lot of information out there if we know where to look. So another website I came across was the BBC History website. They have a Victorian mugshots gallery referenced in this article. And this is one of the individuals, Rebecca Feinberg. What I liked about this one, I thought it was kind of amusing. So she was described as a Jewish prostitute. Her modus operandi is to entice men into a house, get them to undress and go to bed. Whilst the man is in bed, one of the bullies rifles his pockets. And they made a note. They said there's a rather ambiguous entry accompanying her photo. And the entry says, "Stops drunken men in the street and robs them. Known to most of the staff." So hopefully they meant she was known because they'd arrested her often, but you never know. This particular website shows mugshots and criminal faces for Newcastle. So similarly, we have a collection of images with some details, and there are 288 photos, as you can see down here in the collection. So quite a few different individuals. Here's a young girl, age 11, 7 days hard labor after being convicted of stealing iron. And this website, this is a website from, I believe it's Aberdeen. Yes, the Aberdeenshire Archives. Some very grim looking images here. And again, a little description on what they were charged with and some images. So these websites, it was strictly from searching on words like mugshots, Victorian photograph albums, criminals, and these are the websites that came up. So that caused me to wonder what the National Archives would have. So I went to the National Archives website and looked at their research guides, and there are a number of interesting ones. So there is a guide on how to search for records of prisoners and convicts. And what's nice is you notice there is a long list of related guides covering everything from civil court cases, criminal court cases, bankrupts and insolvent debtors because they were thrown in prison, a guide on prisons and prison staff, and there's a really good section outlining some of the information that you can find online. Most of it is in the paid websites, Find My Past and Ancestry. There is other information out there, some on Family Search, some on other websites, and some of these records have been digitized right on the National Archives website. Another guide they had, which of course I had to explore, they've got a guide, Victorian Prisoners Photograph Albums from 1872 to 1873. So I thought this one showed a lot of promise. It gives the physical description, the date and place of birth, the crime they committed, the sentence, where they were convicted, and their intended residence after they are released. So I didn't find any Rentons in that particular photograph album. It's only photographs from 1872 to 73. But I did search on Dawson, one of my other family names, and I found, when I searched on Dawson, I found a number of entries, one of them for Maria Dawson. So I'll just show you when I click search for Dawson, I came up with these matches and I clicked on this entry for Maria Dawson. And this is what it showed me. And I logged in to my free National Archives account, and it said I could download this particular document about Maria free of charge. So I did that, and this is what I got. So it says the date of this record was August 23rd, 1873. It gives her age on discharge, her height, description, hair color, eye color, complexion. It says where she was born, whether she was married or single, her trade, distinguishing marks. So she's got a scar and it says where. And it gives some other information, the offense, simple larceny, her sentence, 10 days, when she's going to be set free, and where she will be living. So let's take a look at what kinds of information is available on some of the subscription websites. Now, even if you don't have a paid subscription for Find My Past, you can still create a free account. So I logged on using my free account, searched on Renton, and found a lot of entries for an individual called Amherst Richard Renton. And that piqued my interest. For once, it's an unusual name, and I thought I can probably find out quite a bit about him. So I filtered my search results to limit it to Amherst Richard Renton. And I sorted these results by year. Now, as you can see, there are an awful lot of entries for the Crime, Prisons, and Punishment collection for Amherst Richard Renton. So he has been a guest of the prison system for quite a few years. We first see him in 1871 and again in 1878. And there's more records for 1885. And if I scroll down, we've got 1889 and 1899. Now, he was not a model citizen in between those dates. The gaps reflect the fact that he was incarcerated for lengthy periods of time. I wondered how much useful genealogical information was hiding in these court records, and actually, there was quite a bit. Now, I'm not going to be able to view the details of these records without a paid subscription on the Find My Past website, but now that I know there are quite a few records for this individual, and you notice some of them are from the Old Bailey Court. Some of them are from this Crime, Prisons, and Punishment collection. So what I'm now going to do is go to some of the free websites that give details of some of these court records. So the first website we're going to go to is Digital Panopticon. And I've talked about this website previously when we were discussing convicts that were transported to Australia. So what I did was typed in the name Amherst Richard, surname Renton. And as you can see, there are a number of entries that correspond to many of the same entries that we saw on Find My Past. We've got an 1877 entry from the Home Office prison records. 1878, he was in Newgate Prison. 1886, the Home Office prison records. 1889, the Register of Habitual Prisoners. So there are a number of entries here. And you'll notice there's quite a bit of information on some of these entries. Some, it just lists his approximate birth year, some physical description, the date that he was incarcerated. In other cases, however, there's a lot more details. And if we click on a particular entry, for instance, this entry from the Metropolitan Police Register, I've got the tab up here, you can see there is quite a bit that has been transcribed. So you are not seeing the original image. You'd have to look on Ancestry or Find My Past, one of the paid websites that would have the original images. But what we have here for free is a transcript. So from a genealogy perspective, I'm getting a birth year, birthplace, height, complexion, hair color, eye color, different useful information as a physical description. He's got some scars. It says a prominent nose, pigeon-breasted, and spinal curvature. His offense was fraud. It gives a trial date, where he was tried, his sentence, and the prison where he was going to serve his sentence, and the date he was to be discharged. Most importantly, too, it shows residence and occupation. Now, the Old Bailey website is another one that offers free details. So again, I went to the Proceedings of the Old Bailey and searched on Amherst Richard Renton. And there are a number of entries here. And if we click on a particular entry, we can see the details. So here's the details of his court appearance in July 1885, where he was convicted stealing a checkbook and 2 indictments for forging and uttering orders for £4 4 shilling and £1 10 shillings with intent to defraud. And his sentence is 6 years penal servitude. So what I noticed when I was looking at all the details of these records, if you basically add his sentence to the trial date, you're getting the year of his next incarceration. So he went before the court in July of 1889, was sentenced to 6 years, which would bring it to 1895, coincidentally the year of his next incarceration. Now, if we go back to Find My Past for a moment, you can also, with your free account, search the newspaper collection. So I went to search, selected newspapers and periodicals, and then typed in Amherst Richard Renton. And again, even though I can't view the details without a paid subscription, I can see a few lines of text, and I can tell this is that same individual. This is June 1885. Amherst Richard Renton, and it gives an alias. He was a civil engineer. And here we have him a few days later. He's been brought to the Southampton Police Court. And they've got some details there. Here's a report from 1895. Again, a civil engineer, it gives his address. So these newspaper articles will shed more light on his criminal career. And in fact, one of the items I saw in the paid subscription Ancestry website, they actually had a photo of him because he made their habitual criminal list for the Police Gazette. So I found it really interesting tracing this person's movements just using those prison records. I did find him in a few census records listed as a convict. So that was rather interesting. I also found a passenger list suggesting that an Amherst Richard Renton went to the US. So I'm wondering if that's also why there might have been a gap between 1871 and 1878. It looks like he might have headed to the US for a period of time. Some other guides, as I mentioned, there's a prisons and prison staff guide, the civil court cases, criminal court cases, Old Bailey, and the Police Gazette. And the Police Gazette, there are quite a few issues of it available online. It was known as the Quarterly Pursuit when it was first established in 1772. It was known as the Public Hue and Cry, or just the Hue and Cry, and then later as the Police Gazette. So this wiki article gives a good history of that newspaper. The British Newspaper Archives, if you have a subscription or a Find My Past subscription, they do have issues of the Police Gazette and they have some early issues. So you would have to look at the years of coverage. It is not continuous, but they do have a number of different issues in these various year ranges. Ancestry also has some issues, not the same ones that British Newspaper Archives necessarily has. Their coverage is later. They have 1885, they have 1901, 1911, 1921, and some from the 1930s. Now, one of the interesting things about the Police Gazette during World War I, they were a great source for listing anyone who was a deserter. They had special supplements. So the 1914 to 1917, 1918 supplements listed the deserters. And Family Search also has a number of issues, and these you can view free of charge. So I just searched on Police Gazette and clicked on this entry. And here is the list of items showing the date range. And I need to log in because it's signed me out. There, you'll notice there is no key on these cameras now that I've logged back in. So I can click on any of these entries and view the digitized films. And this is what one of them looks like. So you're getting the name of the individual that was being accused. In this case, it's an entry for Edward Pearce, who absconded Friday the 28th from the service of Mr. Tamplin's solicitor. It says he broke open a drawer in his master's chambers and stole this amount of goods, this amount of money. And it gives his age, it gives a description. So there's all kinds of really interesting entries in these particular circulars, the Police Gazette. The other thing I would point out, there are also items available through Google Books or through the Internet Archive. But when you are searching, be aware that there is an American publication called the National Police Gazette. It is very different from the British Police Gazette. If you look at Wiki, originally, the idea was that it would be, they refer to it as a chronicler of crime and criminals. But over the years, as it was bought out and there was a new publisher, it focused more as a gentleman's lifestyle magazine. So it would have tabloid-like coverage. So you will find that if you're looking at these pictures, it was focusing on sports. It focused on burlesque shows, vaudeville routines. So it was not the same kind of publication as the British Police Gazette. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. Don't forget to download the handout. You'll find the link in the video description at the bottom of your screen. You may need to click Show More to see the handout links. Thanks for watching.